He's worn so many hats along, his different careers. Because even at the beginning of the show, when he said we're going to be having SK Blue, everyone on set was like, SK Blue, mazali danga wapi, anafanya nini? Well, he's now CEO of Gold Avenue Africa. Karibu sana, Mr. Samwel.
Asante sana, man.
Welcome.
Asante.
Does anyone ever call you Sam?
By the way,
Kuria.
no.
Mr. Kuria. Does anyone ever use that?
No. People just cut the blue and kept the SK.
Yeah. SK is
so business guys say SK. Yeah. Anyone who has a blue, ni mtu wa mziki.
And I can see today we decided
Leo, it seems.
It's a green day.
Matatu.
They say great minds.
Tembe chini ya mti.
Karibu sana.
Asante, man.
And, let's talk about SK,
yes.
the blue.
Yes.
Msanii,
yeah.
Akiwa na Madridi. Bro, because I was looking at some of the pictures of back then, and I was like, what SK at this particular time? Form ilikuwa gani?
Your time nilikuwa mwanamuziki. And the idea was to reach a certain generation. Now unajua, we get to a point of understanding that the generation you're leading is listening with their eyes. So unless you look a certain way, then you miss on their reception.
Right.
So it was important for me to package that way. From a pastor's child, it was very unconventional.
I can imagine.
So mzaya kanichuja home, jo akaniambia
hizi dreadi, huwezi ishi hapa na.
Hizi sitaweza. At first I was called in by deacon board. Unajua zile deacon board za church. Deacon board wakasema, "Oe, ni aje? Itabidi ukata hizi dreadi." Yeah. So trying to explain this, it didn't make sense. So I ended up being told. My dad used to tell us, if your dream is not worth dying for, it's not worth living for. Some say it, you die for your dream if it's worth living for. So yeah.
Baki umejitoa. And it's so funny because at that time you felt so strongly about how you wanted to package yourself as a musician.
Yes.
You're willing to take that risk and go out.
Correct, yes.
What made you finally decide now to shave the dreads? As in after mlekosana na mbuyu umetoka hao. You've made a statement.
Yeah.
What made you, because that was it was the look.
Yes, it was. So I had them for like 6.5 years, almost 7. So at that particular point, with evolution, so I started as a musician, then crossed over into a music producer, then into a TV producer, and slowly getting to that point, I realized that there are a few things that were lacking system-wise, and we needed to sort them. We needed participation of investors into the music space. Because banks would not touch us. Banks were saying, we can't understand you creative people. Yeah. So if you default ndachota nini sauti. Yeah. So at that point I realized that we actually need to form structures and now build a lending company. At that particular point, knowing that I'm now going into business to form structures, package. It was a very high price for me.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Ukaenda kwa kinyozi kumwambia,
let them go. Yeah. At first they thought I was joking, but I had to.
And it's interesting when you talk about that particular journey, from being an artist, the natural progression for any artist. You'll be an artist for a while, then from there probably open a production house.
Correct.
People see that connection because it's what you've been doing.
It's not too far, it's correlated.
Yeah. TV also, that's an extension. Video,
video inaenda kwa TV.
Hivyo ndio inakuanga. Was that the plan up until that point? Was that, as an artist, did you see yourself doing that?
Actually, it was by need. Because at first, as an artist, going into music production was very expensive. So you're looking at it and you're thinking, how do we crack it? The best way we would think of cracking it was becoming producers.
It's the only way.
Yeah. Because the only currency you had at that time is time. So let me do time on this software and be able to. So with my partner at that point, we basically went in and had to learn. No one wanted to play the music. So guys were telling us, hey, if you want us to play your audio song, bring your video. So we are thinking, it's radio. So we got to a point where we realized, okay, let's do them anyway. We started doing them. No one wanted to play the videos because they are cartels. So different cartels wanted to play their people, their cartel, their clique, like that. We realized there was such a surge of artists that are not getting played. So he said, probably it's time we go into TV And that's how we went into TV, by need. And the first TV actually we went into was K24.
And it's interesting because even when you talk about that, what you were doing was, it was new at the time. And of course, speaking with the fact that there were those established players who we're now referring to as cartels, who knew how the system was working.
Correct.
When you're trying now to get into that space, when unajaribu kupenya hapo and they're saying, what is this guy trying to do? He's not one of us.
Nani.
How did you deal with that? How did you get in either way?
So we learned a principle, and the principle was, instead of competing, create. So, because you can come in and you're like, hey, okay, it's like tumefungiwa mlango. So you get to a point and say, is the discrimination this player in the game, or is the discrimination the game itself? If it's this player, so then we create an infrastructure and deal with other players like TV directly. And that's how we had to do it. And it wasn't necessarily because we thought that that was the direction, but we were just evolving, inspired by the need of the day.
Right,
Yeah.
right. And evolution up until that point makes sense, like
Yes,
you said.
yeah.
Msanii huenda kuwa producer, anatoka hapo, anaweza fanya TV.
Anaweza do TV.
Hapo tunaiget.
Exactly. Yeah.
Then from there, when you decide to get into this space of, you know, giving loans and finance,
yes.
that is not music related anyway.
At all.
Anyway.
At all.
How did that transition come about and why?
So now we come into K24 and we say, hey, we know gospel music. At that point, we said gospel music is a hit and there is demand. There is an appetite for this product. Why don't you allow us to come in and do a show? At that point, it was called Gospel Garage. Yeah. So when we went in and started doing this show, we realized that the pattern of payment for TV was in arrears. From that show, we got other shows. At some point, we were distributing 1,000 hours of content per month to 8 different stations.
You were doing good.
Yeah, it was
a
lot.
good time.
We had an army of producers. Now, that's the blessing and the challenge all at the same time. Because now you have this army that you need to pay, but yet payment would come probably 120 days in arrears, 200 days in arrears. Now you have
People
the army.
want payment now.
Yes, people want the. You can't tell anyone that I'll pay you after 4 months. So guys, Huko, with the pressure, we tried to knock doors on banks. They said, we can't touch you. We tried to speak to the TV stations, sweet talk them a bit, we can't touch you. So we got to a place, we said, if the bank won't touch us and we won't get better turnaround times, it's about time we created our own bank.
And that's how it started.
And that's how it started. So we called in producers, content developers for TV, and musicians. Called them together, we told them, what would you do if we would sell you money? The money will not be cheap. They said, we don't care that it's cheap, we care that it's accessible. So we formed a company called Time Capital, and the slogan was, we buy you time. Yeah, and we went in. There was only one problem. We didn't have the money. Yeah.
So you've offered people money, but you don't have it.
We don't have the money. So I found 100 Gs. So 100 Gs, we were able to lend it. We said, hey, if we are fruitful, if this money goes, comes back, goes, then we are fruitful. At that point, let's multiply. So it went, came back, went. And now, we now said it's time. We called in someone, they structured it, called in lawyers, they registered it and all. And we formed a board, and we opened our doors for the very first time to private investors. We told them, hey, there is a crisis, and there is a principle that says, don't waste a good crisis.
Never waste a good crisis.
Never waste a good crisis. It carries the best opportunities. So now, there is this crisis, and it's carrying amazing opportunities. These guys that were on the table at that time are being paid $1 million per month in arrears. If we can raise this money, then... And investors started checking in, private investors. So 100 Gs became a mil became 10, 10 became 20, like that. And they started going. And we had the same problem. We were running out of money. So we got to a point and we said, so we speak to other lenders. People were telling us, you don't talk to competition. But now we said, it doesn't make sense. Probably they can decode this, or we can decode something they're facing. Sitting with them, we told them, we are running out of money. They said, where have you been? We've been running out of money all along. So we thought, Allah, could it be that the opportunity is not even just lending borrowers, but lending lenders? Because now they wanted our market. So we thought, then give them our market and let them be our market. So we sold that business and now started lending lenders as Gold Avenue Africa.
You know,
private equity now.
It's very interesting because when you talk about it like that, it seems like it all makes sense and that's what you're supposed to move. But I'm just thinking because at the time ulikuwa msanii.
Nilikuwa tu msanii. Na dread zangu.
Did you have a background in finance? Because what you're doing now, moving into this space, it's really technical. You know, talking about now getting into this whole private equity business, it's a whole different ballgame.
It's completely.
See, at Shylock, nipatie so, and then next week nipatie 120. So, how did you have to go back to school to upscale, or how did it work?
Actually, it was purely on that hunger of wanting to know, iki tu ni nini, mbona tunakwama? Is there a way? Could there be a way that we haven't thought of? And the education that I had to get was alternative education. You see, alternative education is different. Because you're in a fast-changing environment, alternative education is learning as things change. Formal education is learning what has changed or what will change, which is such a challenge. Sometimes you get this thing, you learn it, then you go on the ground, you're like, ay, ground really shifts. Because the ground shifts. And the reason why the ground shifts is every time information doubles, there's a disruption. Information used to double 60 years, every 60 years. That's why they used to say, kuishi kwingi kuona mengi, ama kujua mengi. Then all of a sudden, after printing press, every 10 years, information doubled. All of a sudden, after television, all these things doubled after 5 years. Right now, in the Internet of Things, it's doubling every 6 months. Every 6 months, there's a new phone. Every 6 months, then you realize that the future is alternative learning.
And you talk about alternative learning. That means learning when you're in the space?
Yes, as things are changing progressively. Learning is no longer an event that you do and clear. Now you have to do progressive learning. And that's why I was telling you about us now coming together to build an app, but I know we'll get to that allows people to learn progressively. And that's why I wanted to talk about this, because I wanted to learn about how you learned this, but you decided to probably give a shortcut for other people who want to learn, especially financial literacy. Exactly. So you decided to come up with an app. Yes. What's that about? So we, as a company, we sold that business. We went into private equity. We wanted to be in two spaces: renewable energy and financial services. So renewable energy, we have two companies. One company is called Makueni Power Company. We are developing a 40-megawatt power plant in Makueni with the intention of selling the power to KPLC for a 20-year period. So we've been on that project for like 3.5 years, getting it done. We have another one as well called Umeme City. We put solars on rooftop. During the day, the houses run on solar. During the night, they run on battery backup. So you can get someone who says, get me off KPLC during the day, let me be on KPLC usiku. Right. Or some people as well are saying, I want to be off completely. So we do that. But now in financial services, we consolidate resources from investors with the intention of growing it. And number two, we actually do financial literacy. And that we are doing purely from a point of as well. People are asking, these things that you guys are doing, what did you learn? The things that you're saying, how did you learn? So I was trying to explain, then I realized, why don't we just create a platform? So we call the platform Clean Money Media. Clean money because the clean money element is a bit controversial in a way, because people know dirty money. And people think, there's no way of making it clean, but this time we want to change the narrative. Right. And the way I was learning, and I have been learning, is through video, through listening to audio, and I'm doing other things, and as well e-booklets. Not a full book, but a book cut down. So it's an easy chew. So now we have an app called Clean Money Media on App Store. Would encourage anyone to go in there and download it. It's a subscription service, but for this first week of launch, it's free. Then for people just to sample it, enjoy it. But the idea is to get people to progressive learning. Right. Not just an event, but something that goes on. And as you are progressively learning, at any point did you feel like, okay, fine, I can see what's going on here, but let me just go and get probably a professional certificate, something in finance, just to back it up. Did that ever cross your mind when you're busy trying to structure these deals,
doing Makueni power supply, all this, because you know it gets to a point where even as you're learning, something is dropped in a meeting, you're like, I have no idea what that guy said, Mazi.
Yeah, you remember that concept of a board? So the concept of a board was we need to partner with two kinds of people, specialized minds and as well specialized hands. So the idea is to glue them together.
Right.
So whenever we do like something in a sector, so we get people of that sector and put them in a board. Then we get specialists who now can implement it. So with that, then you realize that the true business of my business is not the business of power or the business of finance, but the business of creating value. Yeah. So if I can create value through could develop easy caps, then I need to master creating value and partnering, accessing from specialist expertise.
And for someone who was, you know, in the limelight for quite a while, you know, everywhere you'd go, SK. Did you ever feel like getting out of the limelight was a disservice to you and your brand, because now, you know, probably not as many people know SK the way they did back then? Where you'd walk into any room and everyone knows who you are. Did that ever cross your mind?
Actually, it felt like a breather. You know, sometimes you're on that spotlight and you feel the pressure of the spotlight, and you start valuing the things you are able to do outside a lens. And private citizen is a big deal, man. It makes sense. Nowadays, you go into a supermarket, no one cares. You go with your toys and they're jumping, and you jump in as well on the bouncing castle.
And
no one cares.
No one wants to know even who that is.
It's amazing. I wouldn't want to trade it for anything.
And it's a good thing you mentioned that. How's family life, you know,
family is
juggling
great.
that into the biashara?
Family is great. Now, since we work from a team point of view, family is great. I do intentionally spend as much time as possible with family. My kids are growing now. I have 2 kids. My wife is amazing. Marriage is something I would recommend for everyone. It needs intentionalism, and that is something that I celebrate.
Do you ever feel like, because for very many people who we have on the show, there's always that sacrifice at times, like, Maze, you're running the biashara, but at times there's something you want to go for. There's a parents' day, a swimming gala, but Makueni has a board meeting. And you have to be there.
Work-life balance. For me, work-life balance, what we decided to do is have office close to home and at the same time have school close as well. So now everything is right there. So it's easy to pop into school as well. Every company that we have, I don't run the company. So it's run by managing directors. So at the moment, I purely do fundraising and fund management from a board point of view.
So it's a more supervisory role at the top.
Exactly.
Okay.
So because the idea of our board is to have me focus more as a mind, not as the hands. If I go into hands, I confuse them because then I feel like we need to innovate. So when we place a strategy, I pull back and
you
focus.
let them implement.
Exactly. Focus on fundraising, and fund management.
I want you to see some guy here. This guy. How long ago was this? Because I can still see to dread bado tulikuwa.
To dread tulikuwa kwa umbali. This was probably 2003. That's
Mras.
Ras. Wow, this was 2005-ish. I remember this time we had just been nominated, myself and Rafton, for gospel music, American Gospel Music Awards. This was a slam a week campaign. We did 5 slams in 5 weeks because we came to that place where we thought, instead of waiting for us to penya, that's prophecy. That's a while back, man. That's when I was young, man.
Okay, even as we come to a close, so much evolution happened from that guy right there to here.
Exactly.
When you look forward, where does it go next? Like just briefly, in like one liner, where does the business...
where we go next? So for me, currently, I'm truly sold out to transformation. I want to build businesses that we can be able to sell, and businesses that are not just in Kenya but across the continent. The intention is to change the narrative that says the one thing Africa will not do is consolidate local capital. So we want to break that and consolidate, bring people into participation, bring diaspora into participating in building an economy that is African, that is aggressive and growing. So currently, that is something that I'm passionate about, and as well, discipling minds. Because unless we decode, people say we don't invest because we don't know where to invest and we don't know how to invest. So we are dedicated to teach them that and give them a platform for investment.
SK?
Nimesound kama msanii.
Muda nakwambia hapo umedrop punchline. Hata siwezi ongeza kitu. Thank you so much for coming through.
Baraka.
CEO Gold Avenue Africa. Thank you so much. What an evolution, man.
Asante, man. Thanks for the invite.
And I like your choice in color of suits.
Color pia Simba.
Yes, I like. I like that one. I give it 2 ticks. Thank you so much, SK.
Asante, man.
Asante.
Truly
And of course,
appreciate
we've been up close and personal with SK, just sharing his journey, not only as an artist, but the evolution up to where he is and where they're going as well. So, of course, an amazing conversation. You can catch up with him online as well to take it even further. But speaking of journeys and destinations, that's the one thing people aren't doing this morning, because the roads, totally different kind of homes on that one. The Matatu strike seems to be in full effect. We spoke to Grace Kuria earlier. She was in